It's been almost 10 years since Battlefield 1 came out, and somehow, I'm still waiting for another World War I game to make me feel the way that game did. We've gotten plenty of World War I shooters since then. Some have gone hardcore, some have focused almost entirely on realism, but few have managed to capture that feeling of actually being thrown into the absolute chaos of a World War I battlefield. And then, I played this. This is World War I Gallipoli, and while it's definitely a very different game from Battlefield 1, this might be the closest I've felt to that experience in years. Not because it's trying to copy Battlefield, but because Gallipoli seems to understand something that a lot of tactical shooters forget. A game doesn't have to be complicated to be immersive. Gallipoli sits in a really interesting place, because this isn't Battlefield 1. The gunplay is slower, you're more vulnerable, positioning matters more, and running directly towards the enemy with absolutely no regard for your own life usually ends about as well as you would expect in 1915. But this isn't Squad or Hell Let Loose either, and I think that's one of Gallipoli's biggest strengths, because those games can be incredible. But sometimes I don't want to spend half my night learning logistics just so I can eventually get shot by somebody hiding 300 meters away. Gallipoli takes some of those tactical ideas and simplifies them. You still have teamwork, you still have defined roles, you still have slower, more deliberate combat, but everything feels like it's designed to get you into battle instead of making you study how the battle works. And nowhere is that more obvious than the classes. One of the first things I noticed playing Gallipoli was how different the classes actually feel. They're not just different loadouts, they're different jobs. Take the officer. You're not running around with the best rifle in the game stacking up kills. You have a sidearm, and that's it. But in exchange, you can call in artillery. Suddenly, I'm looking at the battlefield completely differently. I'm not thinking about the guy directly in front of me. I'm looking at where the enemy is concentrating, where the team is struggling, where an artillery strike could actually change what's happening. And then you've got the whistle. Blowing it allows your team to spawn on your position, and because it's on a cooldown, you can't just spam it whenever you want. So now, staying alive matters for a completely different reason. I'm useful because of what my class can do, not just because I can shoot somebody. And that's something I really like about Gallipoli's class design. Each role gives you a reason to play differently. You're still fighting the same battle, but depending on what you choose, you're experiencing that battle from a completely different perspective. And that makes changing classes feel meaningful, instead of just changing guns. And the classes lead into something else Gallipoli takes surprisingly seriously: the history. Because this game goes pretty far with the historical accuracy. The British and Ottoman uniforms look fantastic. The weapons look and operate the way you'd expect them to. And importantly, the developers aren't afraid to let a World War I game actually be fought with World War I weapons. Most of your fighting is done with bolt-action rifles and equipment that actually makes sense for the soldiers you're playing. And this is one area where the Battlefield 1 comparison starts to fall apart. Because I really enjoy Battlefield 1, but Battlefield 1 also looked at every experimental automatic weapon somebody built in a shed between 1914 and 1918 and apparently decided, yeah, give everyone one of those. It made Battlefield 1 an incredibly fun game, but Gallipoli is going for something different. The limitations of the period are part of the experience. And sometimes the attention to detail gets kind of ridiculous. Take V Beach. That ship is the SS River Clyde. During the actual Gallipoli landings in 1915, the British deliberately ran the ship aground at V Beach and used it to land troops. And the developers went so far with recreating it that you can actually see the areas of the ship where the paint job was still unfinished. That's the kind of historical detail that 99% of players are probably never going to notice. It doesn't give you experience, it doesn't change the balance. Most people will probably run straight past it while someone is shooting at them. but it's there anyways, and details like that add up. Because instead of World War I simply being an aesthetic of the game, it feels like the developers actually care about the specific battle they're recreating. That historical setting also gives some structure to how the battles actually played out. Most matches essentially revolve around attacking and defending positions, but capturing one isn't as simple as standing inside a circle until a bar fills up. As the attackers, you're trying to reach the enemy HQ. Once you get there, you have to plant dynamite underneath it. And then comes the important part. You have to keep it there. The defenders can push back and stop you. So suddenly the objective turns into this desperate little fight over a couple sticks of dynamite. If you manage to defend it long enough,
we're winning! Press on!
the HQ is destroyed and the entire battle moves forward. And as somebody who has played way too much Battlefield, the easiest way I can describe it is almost like someone combined Breakthrough with Rush. You have the moving front line of Breakthrough, but instead of simply capturing every position, you got that Rush style movement where you actually have to arm and defend the objective. And I really like that combination, because blowing up an enemy headquarters feels considerably more satisfying than watching a blue circle slowly become a red circle. The building system follows that exact same philosophy. You can capture an area, reinforce it, and build useful defenses. And when you take an enemy position, you can dismantle what they have built. And that's basically all I needed to understand before I started using it. I didn't have to watch a 40-minute YouTube tutorial. I didn't have to learn an entire logistics system. I saw a position that needed defensives, and I built some. This is where I think Gallipoli gets something really right. Complexity and depth aren't the same thing. A system can be incredibly complicated without actually creating interesting decisions. Gallipoli strips away a lot of that complexity while keeping the decisions. Do we reinforce this position? Do we push? Do we tear down what the enemy built? Where should these defenses actually go? Those are interesting choices. Figuring out which structure carries which type of supplies isn't necessarily why I'm here. And compared to something like Squad or Hell Let Loose, I find that really refreshing. And then there's the actual shooting. Gallipoli's gunplay is slow, but I mean that as a compliment. There's something about using these old rifles that naturally changes the pace of a firefight. You fire, you work the bolt, you find your target, you fire again. And every missed shot matters because you don't have an assault rifle waiting to immediately correct your mistake. It forces you to slow down, use cover, and pick your shots. And when a bunch of players are doing that at all the same time, you suddenly get these firefights that feel completely different from most modern shooters. Until the artillery arrives.
We've got him rattled.
Then everyone dies. But even that contributes to the atmosphere. There's this constant shift between these really deliberate individual engagements and complete chaos happening all around you. And through all of this, I keep coming back to Battlefield 1. Mechanically, these games aren't actually that similar. Battlefield 1 is faster, it's more cinematic, it's more accessible. And let's be honest, DICE had a slightly larger budget, but there's something about the atmosphere that feels familiar. The artillery, the whistles, the bolt-action rifles. Watching people climb out of a trench and immediately realizing that this was a horrible idea. There's a weight to the Battlefield, and there's a neat connection between the two games because Battlefield 1 actually took us to Gallipoli itself. Battlefield introduced a massive audience to this campaign, and nearly a decade later, Gallipoli is taking that setting and building an entire multiplayer experience around it. But where Battlefield 1 presented World War I as this enormous cinematic spectacle, Gallipoli slows everything down. It cares more about the weapons people actually carried, the uniforms they actually wore, the places where these battles actually happened. It puts me closer to the ground, and weirdly, that makes some moments feel even more intense. That's probably what has surprised me most about this game. Gallipoli is immersive without constantly reminding me that it's a hardcore game. It doesn't need 12 different keybinds just to convince me I'm operating a complicated piece of military equipment. It doesn't need me staring at a map for half the match. Most of the immersion comes naturally from what I'm already doing. I'm following an officer because his position actually matters. I'm waiting for the whistle blow. I'm taking cover because working this bolt takes time. I'm reinforcing a position because I know we're probably going to have to defend this. I'm fighting over an HQ because blowing that thing up is how we're moving the entire front line forward. None of those systems are particularly complicated on their own, but put them together, and suddenly I'm behaving like someone who belongs on this battlefield. The game didn't have to tell me to roleplay. Its mechanics naturally pushed me there. Gallipoli isn't Battlefield 1, and I don't think it should try to be. Battlefield 1 captured World War I through spectacle. Gallipoli seems much more interested in capturing what it might feel like to be one small part of a bigger battle. Sometimes you're leading the charge. Sometimes you're building the position everyone else is going to defend. Sometimes you're calling artillery onto the enemy. Sometimes you're desperately trying to blow up an enemy headquarters. And sometimes you're crawling through the dirt, desperately hoping the guy 5 feet away just notices you. But all of those little moments work together. And after spending some time with it, I think that's why Gallipoli has clicked with me. It's tactical without being exhausting. It's slower without being boring. It's historically grounded without sacrificing the fact that this is still supposed to be a game. It's accessible without throwing away the mechanics that give teamwork meaning. And most importantly, it's the first World War I shooter I've played in a long time that has given me even a little bit of that feeling I got playing Battlefield 1. Not because it recreated Battlefield, but because it reminded me just how damn good this setting can be when a game gets it right.